This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
In 2008, a podcast was created with one goal: to bring Bat fans around the world news related to movies, comics, video games, television, merchandise, and so much more. And now, the Batman Universe Podcast has returned.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the TBU podcast. I'm Dustin, and BJ and Scott are with me today, and we are talking about the Batman. That's right. After a couple of weeks of talking about some other things, as we get closer to the release of the film, we're going to be talking about almost nothing but the Batman. And this week we're going to go over some of the updates that have happened over the last 3 weeks. We've kind of talked about a little of these here or there, briefly mentioning the tickets were on sale last week and letting you guys know that you can help TBU out by using our affiliate links for ticket purchases. But then there's also a number of other things. The press junkets are out. We've got a couple of different articles. I've been posting up an article once a week, typically on the weekends, recapping all of the news for the Batman rather than doing it day by day, specifically because there's a lot of news in general, but there's not a lot of... There might be a new poster that comes out, but unfortunately that's not enough to really warrant an entire article for a single new poster. So rather than forgetting something or missing something because there's just not enough to write about, we're doing articles talking about all of the updates at once every single week. Hopefully you guys have been taking a look at those, but there is a lot of different things that have been happening over the last 3 weeks as we get closer, and the press junkets have started. And while we haven't posted up videos for every single press junket, because let's be honest, there's a ton of them. There's going to be probably close to 100 different media outlets that are going to be doing interviews and things like that. But that said, there's still plenty of things that are popping out of some of those media interviews and things like that we're going to discuss here. And then at the end of the show, we're going to kind of hint at what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks, because there's a lot of stuff that we want to get to before the film comes out and right after the film comes out as well. So starting off, I want to talk about the posters. There is a lot of posters that have released in the last couple of weeks. First off, going back to the week of the first week of February, there was a couple of new posters specifically labeled Unmask the Truth, and there was a Batman, Catwoman, Riddler, and Penguin one. Conveniently, these around the same time also popped up in Times Square, because I remember seeing shots online on Twitter of people taking pictures of these posters, basically being giant across multiple digital billboards in New York City. So the official marketing is clearly well underway. I mean, obviously we're less than 2 weeks away from the film at this point. The film's coming, and the advertising that you see, while I will say I haven't seen as much online as in banner ads and things like that, or even, trailers popping up. But then again, I don't have a lot of ad content that I could actually see it. I know that they've been doing some promotional tie-ins with some events that have been going on. Specifically at the Super Bowl, there was a quick shot I never saw it actually during the Super Bowl. They said it was the big game spot, but I never actually saw it during the Super Bowl. But there was a quick 1 minute clip that showcased Batman and Batman, Flash, Black Adam, and Aquaman, and kind of making everybody aware that 2022 there's going to be a lot of DC films that are going to be releasing. But Batman was part of that. But the media is completely underway, and these were the posters that first came out, the Unmask the Truth. And then if you jump over to the following week, not only was there some new posters, there was a new poster for exclusive for Dolby Cinema. There was a new poster for IMAX, and then there was a new poster also for IMAX, but this one was actually done by Bill Sienkiewicz. I'm sure I'm saying that completely wrong, but he put together a exclusive poster for IMAX as well, so that is there. And then the following week, there was yet another one, just one this time around. The final one that we've got is there was a Chinese poster that released announcing when Batman will be releasing in China, which is March 18th. So what did you guys think of some of these posters? I know recently, BJ, you put together an article on the site's a new TBU 5 Things talking about the best Batman movie posters. Obviously, you were talking about all of the Batman movie posters, but what did you think of some of these new posters that came out over the last 3 weeks?
To keep track, because there's so many keep coming. It's tough to know which are official and which are kind of like fan made. But that new Unmask the Truth one I really liked, with the question mark as like the bullseye around Bruce Wayne, and it features all the major players in the movie. I really like that one. That was I'm a fan of the simpler posters. Just give me Batman and a Bat logo, and I'm sold.
I agree. I mean, I think like the thing that really, like, I've looked at all the posters. I can't remember which one belongs to which because there's so many, and I have seen like a few like around Chicago, posted around. But I think the thing that stands, jumps to mind always is what you said, is that question mark and the crosshairs thing. I feel like that's a good like logo or branding specifically for this movie. Kind of reminds me of the Joker smile for The Dark Knight. So it's just like once you see like, that Joker smile that way, like, automatically what movie's for. And this, it's like, just that little symbol, no matter what it's on, you could put it on anything and like, instantly recognizable for whatever this movie is. So I think it's simple. It kind of gives you like a basic of the movie, it's Batman and Riddler, and just very like easily recognizable.
I agree. The little question marks are obviously the thing that's going to be the equivalent to that Joker smile. It's interesting because Penguin gets a poster, because everything we've heard is that Penguin isn't as big of a, he has a role, he plays a role, but he's not necessarily a main character in the film. He just has a prominent role because he is the Penguin. I'm guessing that the intent was to kind of like set him up to be not necessarily a background character, but a character that is going to be utilized in the future. Maybe as if, I say Scarecrow, but Scarecrow was used in all three Nolan films, but had a very prominent role in the very first film with Batman Begins. But I think Penguin was kind of set that, and then that explains why Matt Reeves came up with the idea for a Penguin series and pitched that to HBO Max for a potential series, because Penguin has the ability to be more fleshed out, because that's not necessarily happening in the film itself. I did read recently somewhere that he is a mob lieutenant right now. He does have the Iceberg Lounge. This was in a description of the film from Entertainment Weekly, which was one of the articles in these updates. There was a brief mention that Catwoman is working as a waitress at the Iceberg Lounge, trying to make ends meet, but is also on the side sometimes a drug dealer. She works for Oswald Cobblepot, who is known as the Penguin, who is a mob lieutenant at the time of the movie taking place. So just that little bit of blurb that was in the Entertainment Weekly article had a lot of information that we didn't necessarily already know. We've seen hints of, let's say, Selina Kyle in a wig in presumably the same place that Drifter Bruce Wayne is attacking, and we've seen Batman attacking Penguin and obviously chasing him down. We've seen that in the trailers. So there's a lot going on there. but I don't know that Penguin is going to have as big a role. I feel like this is very much a first act situation where we're going to see Penguin in the film in the beginning, and he's going to be quickly taken down by Batman in some way. And so it's interesting to see that he got a poster, but I think it's just because he is that recognizable character of the Penguin, and that is what a lot of fans are going to know, and even mainstream people are going to know is, who is that? Oh, it's the Penguin. Let's check this out. If they're, if they're lured in by the idea of Penguin being in the film.
I wonder if he's like, him being labeled as a mob lieutenant. I wonder if that's like the connection. Like maybe he's working for Carmine Falcone, because like John Turturro was playing him. That's a pretty good name for that role. So I kind of wonder if maybe those two are characters we'll see together, kind of working hand in hand. One obviously Penguin working for Falcone or something, but and maybe that relates to the spin-off show Matt Reeves pitched too in some way.
All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is also that same week of February, there was a DC Comics announced that they are going to have a number of their high-profile titles in March having specific variant covers celebrating the release of the Batman. And out of the covers that are released, there's one for pretty much all of the main Bat books that you would expect. There's one for Batman 121. There's one for Batman Killing Time #1, which is the new series launching from Tom King, miniseries that is. Batgirls #4. We've got Detective Comics number 1056. There's Batman the Knight #3. There is Catwoman number 41, Justice League number 74, Nightwing number 90, and Harley Quinn number 13. Those are the books that are going to be getting special covers. We have a gallery on the website. Just look for that Batman Updates article from February 5th, and you can see all of the covers they're releasing. Some of these are pretty cool in their own way. Some of them, the artistic impressions, like I'm looking specifically at Detective Comics number 1056. It doesn't look like the Batman from this film. It looks like somebody said, draw Batman, and here's a glimpse of the car, because it doesn't look like the same Batman. This Batman is way more just has a larger presence. But some of the other ones are like dead on, do a great job of showcasing what we can expect to see from Robert Pattinson's Batman. And then the Harley Quinn one is kind of interesting because it's the only one that showcases multiple characters on the cover, including Penguin, who is extremely deformed. And I'm not sure if that was on purpose or they just took some artistic liberties. The other thing that came out over the past couple weeks is one of the last times we talked about themes, or specifically the score for the film, is we talked about how Matt Reeves released the Batman theme. Well, in the last couple of weeks, we've actually also we've received the theme for the Riddler, and just this past week we received the theme for Catwoman. And so now we've got the trilogy of themes for the film, and I've got to say, this is some really good music. I can honestly say I don't know that it's as iconic as the Denny Elfman music from Batman 1989, but I'm not sure anything will necessarily ever top that. But the music is really good. I would put it right on par with Hans Zimmer's music from the Dark Knight trilogy. So it's definitely good stuff. I just don't know that it is something that is going to be extremely memorable or used over and over again. But there's nothing wrong with the fact that it isn't that, because there already is that iconic Batman music from Danny Elfman.
Yeah, I was listening to the Catwoman one earlier today, but I think the Riddler so far is my favorite, just because it's so, like, it's eerie and creepy, and there's like a weird childlike quality to it at one point, and then it gets like really erratic and crazy. And I love the idea that like it plays with this duality of someone kind of being quiet and timid and reflective, but also like horribly vengeful and angry and erratic. And so it's like, the more of these that come out, the more I've kind of been getting excited, just because I feel like it's been a long time since we've had composers like really try to like diversify the soundtrack. Like I still kind of go back to, something I said on one of our earlier podcasts where like I feel like this kind of reminds me of Shirley Walker a little bit, and it feels like the closest compositions for Batman movies we've had since Elfman and then Shirley Walker's work on the animated series. So in Catwoman, I've long thought Michael Giacchino should have done a Bond film because Catwoman's theme actually reminds me a lot of like a 60s, 70s era Bond girls theme, but it's still good in its own right.
The updates on the themes. I remember in the Whedon cut of Justice League, the Elfman theme is in there, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
That's Michael's music, and it's not Ben Affleck.
All right, so the next thing is that there's a bunch of magazines. Some of these we've mentioned before, but there's a lot of magazines that are featuring either Robert Pattinson or Zoe Kravitz or just the film in general. Just to list off some of them, this isn't even all of them, but Empire did one previously. We have Total Film, GQ, Elle Magazine, Entertainment Weekly. All of these had various covers featuring different elements promoting the film. And obviously, this is a really big film in general. We're going to talk about the projections for the weekend that it releases in a second here. But there's a couple of videos that released this past week that I want to discuss. The first one is there was a video released by Entertainment Weekly that talking about some of the stuff that's in the Entertainment Weekly articles about the Pattinson and Kravitz preparing for the role, talking about how, and this is going to be a common theme in a lot of different media interviews that you see, about how Robert Pattinson came into the role, how he got the role, or how Zoe Kravitz got the role, what they had to do, and what they had to, what pieces of the costume they had to try on in order to secure the role, to make sure that everybody knew that they were the right ones for the role. So that was kind of interesting to see. There was also Robert Pattinson also appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and while he appeared, they also talked about the costume. But there was a clip that was revealed that is the first time this clip has shown up, and I want to talk about the clip because it had some interesting implications. So it clearly takes place, I would say, probably midway through the film, or at least at least the back half of the first half of the film. But it shows Batman in the in the police department, and I would assume this takes place after the situation that Batman, after they arrest Riddler. Riddler is behind that bar where Batman's like, tell me what's going on. What did you do? That kind of thing. I'm sure it takes place after that. But there's a situation that comes up where Gordon is with Batman in a room, and they're talking, and then all of a sudden they look, and Batman notices somebody with a broken nose, and he says to Gordon, "That's the guy. He must be on Penguin's or on the mob's payroll because I took him out. I punched him in the face at the Iceberg Lounge." And then Gordon questions, goes, "Are you saying he's on the take?" And Batman's like, he doesn't even hesitate. He just punches Gordon and then runs out, and then runs through the hallways of the GCPD, and then ends up using the grapple gun to go up the stairwell to escape. And I'm guessing that also leads to the scene that we've seen in the trailer where he's being chased by the police, and then all of a sudden he jumps and has the wingsuit and then glides away. I'm guessing all of that sequence is part of the same time frame, because let's be honest, I think we've seen such a small fraction of this film that we're purposely being shown a very small fraction at a very specific point of the film that's not going to give too much away. So, what did you guys think of that clip?
It was so jarring to see Batman punch Jim Gordon like that, just kind of out of nowhere. I had to rewind it just to see if I missed something, because they're talking about that guy, and Gordon's like, "Oh, he moonlights as a drug enforcer or whatever," and Batman's like, "No, he moonlights as a cop," and then just decks Gordon and books it. I thought I missed something. Like, I wonder if there's part of their little scheme to like expose corrupt cops is like for Batman to act like he's against that him and Gordon aren't really working together. But it was so weird to see it.
Yeah, it was a little confusing. But also at the same time, I think kind of like, since I didn't really quite understand the context and everything, because we haven't seen like the movie, obviously, and everything around that, I really honed in on the very brief action scene that followed, like him running through the hallways and stuff, and all those cops running after him, and him grappling up, and just like looking at like, the composition of that and how tense that sequence is, and it seemed really neat and just really exciting, and just a lot of tension in that back half that like got me intrigued, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's definitely a great clip to promote the film because you are already asking questions after you see it. Like, what exactly is going on? What does this mean? Isn't he working with the police? He's not working with the police. Why is he punching Gordon? Clips like that present a question for fans to ask, I think, are the best promotional tools because you're going to start wondering what's going on and you're going to question it so much so that you're going to want to see it as soon as possible. And obviously, let's be honest here, those clips that they show on late night television and, in media appearances and things like that, those clips are not necessarily intended for the Bat fans who've been following along and have seen every single trailer and things like that. It enhances what we've already seen as Bat fans, but those clips are intended for the mainstream audience that's not necessarily following along with everything going on with the Batman film. And because of that, it does a great job of pulling them in and getting them hooked to want to know what's going on. And I think that they're doing a great job with what we've seen. The other big clip that came out was at the end of the week. Literally, as I was writing up the article, there was a promotion that happened during the All-Star weekend in Cleveland, where the NBA was having a thing on TNT, and because of that, TNT obviously is part of Warner Brothers, and they had a semi-new trailer. I don't know that I would classify it as a trailer, but it was roughly about a minute long, and it showcases a couple of expansions of stuff we've seen in some other trailers. The one thing that it does, in fact, do that we have talked about in the past is that when the message board, or the board, I guess, the conspiracy board that Riddler has, that Batman and Gordon are looking at in some of the previous trailers that we've seen, and some of the images that have released, or little shots online and things like that. Some of the stuff that is part of that, there is, we've talked about how there's Thomas Wayne. There's mentions of Thomas Wayne. There's a picture of a bunch of boys. One of the boys we specifically said is this Riddler because, of course, it has a boy with glasses and hair that's very similar to Paul Dano's, and we just assumed that's who it was. Well, this trailer, which is labeled the Vengeance trailer by a lot of the media, this trailer specifically makes that very apparent that is, in fact, the Riddler, or Edward Nashton, as he's referred to before he becomes the actual Riddler. That is him, and he does have some sort of tie to this orphanage, and it's interesting because some of the stuff that we spent time hypothesizing has actually already been proven before the film actually comes out, which makes me think that there is so much more that we have yet to see.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't have anything to add to that. I thought it was cool, but yeah, I have nothing to add.
Yeah, that 1 minute trailer was definitely the highlight of our Saturday night because the dunk contest was terrible. So I was glad I at least stuck around for that trailer. But I like how they're all kind of we'll call Batman like Vengeance, like almost kind of like in a sarcastic way, like they're goofing on him because they heard him first trailer when he tells the thug that he's Vengeance. They're all kind of like messing with them. I kind of like that part of it, and the part where Gordon, I don't know if he's talking about the Riddler, but when he's like, "Oh, this guy's hilarious," because it kind of those small little like Easter egg tease, like in the future, that there might be a Joker coming, and that we know he's funnier than everybody.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about is the projections. So the article that we posted at the beginning of the month, we posted up kind of a brief synopsis of what Box Office Pro was they released for their long-range projections for the Batman. They put the opening weekend between 135 and 185 million, and obviously that is a huge number, which is great, but this is a significant number specifically for film in general because there's only been one other film able to make that much money since the beginning of the pandemic, which was Spider-Man No Way Home. That's also significant because not only has that film made more money than any other film since the beginning of the pandemic, but it is also extremely close to passing the amount that Avatar made domestically, which was the film that originally dethroned The Dark Knight way back in 2010. also, that movie made a boatload of money, and my hope is that this movie makes a boatload of money. I'm going to see it multiple times. I know a lot of other people are going to end up seeing it multiple times, but I just hope that the mainstream audience that maybe is only going to see it once, they go out and see it once, because I don't know that this is going to be, well, it's not going to be a nostalgia trip like Spider-Man No Way Home. No shade on that film. It was a good film, but it was very much all about the nostalgia of having the different Spider-Mans in the film. And this is kind of the beginning. So if this film can do, maybe not as well as Spider-Man No Way Home, I mean, I hope it does, but if it does $1 billion, that sets up Matt Reeves and what they're wanting to do really well, because even when you look back on Batman Begins, it didn't make $1 billion. I think the hype is there, and I think it's a really good time for the film to be coming out. Specifically, there's like no competition for a while. Uncharted just came out this past weekend, and it only made about 40 to 50 million, which means, no offense to that film, it's going to peter out in the next 2 weeks, because while it might have a good week this coming week, it's not going to hold its place that high in the charts when the Batman comes out on March 4th. Another film that just came out, Dog, did 15 million this past weekend, and that movie did surprisingly well, but again, I don't know that it's going to keep holding those numbers. So I think really the Batman is going to be the film that is going to be in a really good spot to be not having a whole lot of competition in general. There was a Pixar film, Turning Red, that was supposed to release in theaters, and instead it's going directly to Disney Plus. So that film, again, clears the way for there to be even less competition when it comes to the Batman being able to make money. So for the month of March, at the very least, if you're going to the theater and obviously I assume everyone listening to this is going to go to the theater anyway, but for those people who typically would just go to the movie and watch a film, for the month of March, there's not going to be a lot of other films that they're going to be able to see if they're not going to go see the Batman. So it's in a really good spot, because I know sometimes films release and there's a lot of competition, or you've got 2 weeks basically to make a bunch of money before a new movie comes up. That tends to happen a lot in the summer, and it's going to happen a lot this summer, specifically because of all the movies that were previously held out of the theaters last summer, and obviously in 2020, this year is the real year that a lot of films are going to be releasing. So this film has the potential to do really, really well, and I really hope it does.
I'm not an expert or anything, but I have a feeling it might do better than Spider-Man, and for a couple reasons. One, we're seeing declines in COVID cases kind of across the country now, and people are rolling back. I mean, in Illinois, the mask mandate is going away as of a week from when we're recording this, is like the last day for it. So like you're seeing all these declines, so that might encourage more people to go to the theater. But also I think, like Spider-Man is great, and I love Spider-Man. One of my other favorite comic book characters, that I read regularly. But I do feel like Batman is a character that has a little bit more wider appeal, in the sense that, he's typically an adult and can be someone that's more identifiable or recognizable with different audiences, a wider range of audiences. It's not, like the new films are they're great, but you have to be into the teen drama a little bit to, be on board, and it has a darker, edge to it. There's a thriller suspense angle that they use to sell all the Nolan Batman films and, this film. And I feel like that has a little bit of wider appeal in its own to different audiences than, just the people who go to see the MCU films. So I kind of feel like those couple of factors might help this topple Spider-Man, and I hope so, because I want this to do well, because I want to see all the spin-off shows and, sequels, and, they're already flooding all the stores with all the product for both adults and kids, so it's everywhere.
Well, just to jump in real quick, the one thing I will say is, while I do not disagree with any of your statements, the one thing that I will counter is, while Spider-Man, I think, is geared towards a slightly younger audience, and this movie gears towards obviously an older audience, the one thing that Spider-Man always does really well is it attracts children. While there are plenty of children who like Batman, I think Batman has been on a stretch, at least for a while, where not a lot of children are as excited about Batman as they used to be. I can say from having 3 kids, my youngest, who's only 4, who hasn't been around for any Batman film to release, he when Spider-Man came out and I said we were going to the theater, he was gung-ho about going to the theater. When I told him Batman was coming out, not so much. My other 2, on the other hand, they've been around and they've experienced it, and they were absolutely wanting to go see the Batman film. And once I see it and make sure that it's completely appropriate for them, I will definitely be taking them. But that said, I think that Spider-Man is it's the kid-friendly character, and I think that's one of the reasons why it does so well. When it comes to merchandise as a whole, Spider-Man outsells Batman hands down, and I think a lot of that has to do with Warner isn't always great about making sure there's enough merchandise or marketing the merchandise to the right people. And that's not necessarily just Warner Brothers. For the longest time, I think there wasn't a lot of action figures, or as many as there could be. And I think now we're at a prime time where we've got McFarlane and Spin Master both making tons of action figures outside of DC Direct is doing stuff, and other companies are doing things, more collectible aspects. But now is the first time in, honestly, the history of the entire podcast. And that's almost 14 years. That is 14 years. That's 14 years. In 14 years, there's more Batman stuff on shelves right now than there has been at any other point. There's stuff for young kids. There's stuff for collectors. There's stuff, there's vehicles, there's play sets, there's all kinds of stuff. And I greatly appreciate that. And hopefully, maybe Batman does overtake Spider-Man, and it would be great to see. But the point you made about the COVID cases is a good point, because Spider-Man did come out in December, right when cases were starting to go back up. And the cases, at least I should say the average cases across the country, have gone down significantly since then. So it does have the potential of being able to be the first movie for a lot of people to go see that maybe they wouldn't have gone seen a couple months back when Spider-Man came out.
Number 2 behind Spider-Man, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, because that movie was such a juggernaut. So, but I'm sure this movie might approach numbers like The Dark Knight did and Dark Knight Rises, may probably exceed them, because I know a lot of people who really aren't into the Marvel movies, but they were really into the Dark Knight trilogy, and this movie gives off that vibe, the Nolan vibe. So I wonder if they will. I'm sure plenty of people who like the Dark Knight trilogy will come see this.
All right, so that is going to wrap up our conversation about all the new updates for the Batman. Next week, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about in the next couple weeks. So next week we have a little bit of an interesting episode. There's a book that released. It's called Before the Batman, an original movie novel, and this book specifically takes place as a prequel to the movie itself. And we, as a collective group, are going to be reading through this and pulling out some of the interesting facts prior to the film coming out to share. And just to give you a tease, because our fellow co-host Otto picked up the book earlier this week, and he shared a couple of just the little bits that were just revealed on the first couple pages of the book. For example, the reason why Bruce Wayne is not in Wayne Manor is because Wayne Manor was donated to the city to serve as an orphanage by Bruce's parents when Bruce was 6 years old, and the Waynes moved to Wayne Tower. Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack with just that reveal. That explains why the Batcave is in that subway tower at the base of Wayne Tower, as they've already said. It explains why we don't see Wayne Manor or the Batcave. It also ties into the potential aspect of the Riddler being an orphan at the orphanage, which we've talked about in the past. There's a lot of things there. Another one, there was Thomas Wayne decided to run for mayor when Bruce was 10. That's a big deal, because that's also around the time that Thomas Wayne would have ended up being murdered, and he could have been murdered because maybe he was going to become mayor. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things. I'm not going to go into too many more because we want to save some of them for next week, but there's a lot of reveals here. So if you are interested in picking up the book, I'll provide a link in the description of the video on YouTube, and also the description of the podcast over on the website for you guys to take a look at the book. It's only $10 to pick up. The paperback copies are already sold out on Amazon, surprisingly, so you'd have to pick up a digital copy if you want to pick up a digital copy. It's the same price, unfortunately, but that is what we're going to be talking about next week as we lead into the release of the film. The following week, we're going to be talking all about the Batman. The film will have released by the time we record, and we're going to be giving our first reactions to the film itself and talking about basically everything. I mean, we might unpack it over multiple episodes because there's just so much to talk about with the almost 3-hour runtime that the film's going to be. So that's what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks. And then obviously after the film comes out and after we do our first reactions and kind of a roundup for the film, we'll be doing a bunch of other things that might not be necessarily be related to the Batman, but who knows? We might be talking about the Batman for the entire month of March. And if that's the case, that's just what's going to happen. I mean, you guys are along for the ride. We appreciate all of our listeners that have been taking a listen to the podcast since we relaunched, specifically for gearing up for the release of this film. That's one of the reasons why I made sure that we could bring this podcast back, was so that we could talk about it prior to this film coming out, get the hype really amped up, and then discuss it once it comes out. So that's what you can look forward to. Obviously, we have lots of other topics that we're going to get to over the coming months. There's all kinds of different things that we can talk about. And if you have something that you'd like us to talk about, or if there's something related to the Batman film that you want us to talk about in March, please drop us a message, or you can leave it on Discord. You can leave it on the website in the comment section. You can leave it on YouTube on the comment section, wherever you're listening to the podcast. You can always email us at tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net with any of those suggestions for episodes, either currently with the Batman or in the near future with other topics you'd like us to discuss. In addition to that, be sure to check out our website, thebatmanuniverse.net, for all kinds of news, original content, other podcasts related to movies, TV, merchandise, video games, comics, and everything else related to the Bat fandom. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Discord. You can find all of our social links over on the website, thebatmanuniverse.net, at the top of the page. And if you are interested in supporting us, we do have a link that is always posted at the end of the podcast description, talking about different ways you can support us, either through Patreon, which allows you to get early access to these episodes, unedited versions of the episodes, and then we also have a number of other ways you can support us, so you can take a look at those. And the main way right now that you could support us is if you are buying tickets to go see the Batman, be sure to use our affiliate links for either Fandango, Atom Tickets, or Alamo Draft House. We do get literally a small, let's put it, I'll be completely honest here. We get a dime for every ticket we sell. So every ticket we sell, we get 10 cents. So if you can share 10 cents with us, which you're not getting charged for, it's obviously an affiliate link. That helps the site do what we do with editing and our server costs and all of that stuff that comes with running a massive site like we run. So, with all of that being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. For BJ, Scott, and myself, we will see you guys next time.